Welcome back to another God brand video. Today we'll be tackling Lara Croft from Tomb Raider. This is a Zez Studios model, upsized to 1/4 scale. That's quarter scale. And the reason I chose this model this time round was I just really wanted to do something with the jungle setting, and I had a bunch of like practical moss and grassy effects I've never used before, so that's kind of what we're tackling today and why I chose this one in particular. And as you can see here, the base mainly consists of like some bricks all run down, you know, an old temple-ish pillar at the bottom, a big tree, some little stumps, some ropes, and 2 toucans, and there was a monkey as well, but I didn't include it. I got to the end of the model and I was just like, I really don't want to paint this, it's not going to add that much anyway, so I left the monkey, but everything else is here. So lots of greenery on here, and that's kind of why I decided to, you know, use all my grassy and green effects I had lying around to really bring some life into this, and you'll see that later. Now, I used an unreal amount of paint on this, and I'm going to be skimming over it for the most part, but I will show a quick flash of it every time. I'm starting off the base here with just some Rhinox hide, and I'm just stippling that with a dry brush. It doesn't have to be any particular dry brush, but I prefer these like bushy kinds when I'm doing this dirty type of bases. And you just stipple that on rather than dry brushing it on. Stabbing motions, this kind of imprints that brown deep into the crevices just in certain parts. As you can see, I'm not really clean sweeping doing a whole area, I'm just dabbing in some bits. Nothing in particular, but I want a bit of a random look to occur, and we're going to work off of that. I do a lot of the same stuff for the bricks and the pillars. Keep in mind, whenever you're doing things like greenery, nature, cement, just things that are outside and dirty, you can interchange so many different colors. You don't have to be exact. I use Baneblade Brown for this, and I use it for a few things further on throughout the model, but typically, you know, you just need to get roughly within the same parameters of the color if you're trying to like follow along the paint job. Don't freak out if you can't find the exact color, just get something that looks similar. Now you're going to see this wash show up quite a lot, and you use this to dirty stuff down and to take like all these bright colors and kind of combine them into something that looks weathered, like it's been together for a long time. And you can apply it in a million different ways. I'm using a sponge at the moment, but you know, you can put it on with a brush, dab it off, just dab it on, leave it on, you know, it just really depends what kind of look you're after. Here I just drip it straight onto the model, brush it over a bit, and then just dab off some of that excess with a sponge again, and it looks all the better for it. I use more of that Baneblade Brown here to go around the edges of the temple concretey parts, and I just use this old shriveled up brush here, and I just dry brush that on pretty lightly, and heavier on corner pieces more, because that kind of gives the idea that, you know, the corners have suffered more damage, and that just, you know, adds more life. Moving on to the trees, we have Rhinox hide again. I'm also stippling this on, and this is just to give it more deeper brown look. I don't want to just dry brush this on. I'm actually putting it in there a bit more, and then I'll go over with the airbrush with that same color and just really push it in further. You might also notice I don't get like 100% coverage on this, and that's because I really do want to leave that randomness kind of look that you get with the trees. There's going to be many layers anyway. Going over with this dark flesh here, it adds more of that, you know, regular tree look, I suppose, that brighter brown, more reddish tint to it. And again, just leaving small gaps. I'm not just blasting every single surface of the tree. I'm, you know, putting it more in just certain spots over others. Back with the Baneblade Brown yet again. This really makes that bark part of the tree pop out more. Using, again, doesn't matter what brush you have at your disposal. I'm just using this one. I have massive makeup brushes. You can use makeup sponges. I can use proper dry brushes. Anything works, especially with dry brushing, like, you know, natural stuff like this. You don't have to be very precise at all. And then moving forward, we got this green. This is for all the vines. There were a lot of vines on this model. I had to go all around it. I'm kind of just going to show one bit and then I'll do the rest off camera because it takes so long. And then move up to a brighter green and just slightly brush that on. This just adds a little bit of difference, so you're not just looking at the same color all the time. Just adds a bit more flair to the model. And here's where we're looking so far. Even though I plan on going over all these mossy bits with an actual texture later on, it doesn't hurt to block in the color with a green first anyways. So if any of that moss texture falls off, you still have green underneath it, so it's not as noticeable if anything like that happens. And from here we have one of our first special effects. This is AK Interactive's Muddy Ground effect. It looks quite different wet than what it does when it dries, so test this yourself. Just put it on something. I just use cotton tips to apply these because I just throw them out because they're annoying. And basically anything that you would interpret as mud on the model, I'm just stabbing it straight on like you're seeing on the screen now. You can go kinda hog wild with this, but don't go too crazy, and just make sure you know what it looks like when it dries before you do go crazy with it. Anything about yellows, they do not go well over black, so if you can, always white out what you're going to put your yellows on top of before you do them. In this case I just went whole hog straight over it with the desert yellow. I used desert yellow because it's not like a super bright yellow. It's a little bit dark, a little bit gross. Not to worry, we're going to use other shades and things to go over them later, but that's just what I used for the ropes on this model. And I did use a slightly different brown for these other ropes just because they're like different textured, they're not the same, so I didn't want them to look the same. Things like that always go a long way, just making sure stuff doesn't look exactly like the other stuff, if that makes sense. This streaky grime effect, also by AK Interactive, is potent. Be careful when you use this stuff. It's not like the other one you just saw me use before. This stuff's like, I think it's oil based, so it stains like crazy. Look at the difference from this rope going with just the desert yellow to then adding some of that streaky grime effect, dabbing it off. I use a sponge and everything. Just look at the color difference. This is what a wash can do. So always have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking of how to add a bit of life to something. Just using a Agrax Earth shade here to essentially just add a deeper brown into the crevices to add a bit of contrast, and that was about it. It was pretty non-noticeable difference, but it is what it is. This was the first of the grass effects I used. I just got this from a generic cheap Amazon place. I'm not entirely sure if they sell other stuff, but just type into Amazon model artificial grass and there'll be a billion different options. I'm using clear drying PVA glue. Very important that it dries clear, otherwise your model's going to look funny when the glue dries. and moss texture from AK Interactive. It's just little cut up foam bits. I'm pretty sure most people just make their own moss effects, because I mean, it can't be very complicated. But if you're like me and you're lazy and you don't want to do that, you got people like AK that are gonna make it for you. Again, with the PVA, just putting it straight on and then like fingering it on there nice and proper. And it might look like it pops out a little bit funny and looks weird now, but not to worry, we'll fix that up later. I got these green grass tufts here. Again, you'll find these at your hobby shops, otherwise Amazon will have all different kinds of brands. Just look up model grass tufts or miniature grass tufts. You will find plenty of different kinds of these. I know Gamer Grass is a good brand. And this model wash here that I have, I used a lot of this. This added so much of that weathered jungle look that I was chasing so desperately. I added this all over the vines for the starter. I added it over the moss, and you may have noticed there's like green spray on the base there that you didn't see in the video. I put that in the airbrush and just sprayed it willy-nilly. I sprayed it on the bricks, just a little bit here and there, until I was satisfied with the look, and it, you know, looked more like a lived-in jungle space, I guess. Now, when it comes to the placement of the grass tufts, I don't really have a plan. I'm just kind of putting them wherever I want. It's up to you, really. I kind of think of it like, is there a spot that's a little bit bland and there's nothing really to paint? Boom, grass tuft, problem fixed. So do as you wish for this segment. It's pretty simple. The glue I use when I'm putting these major big pieces together, like usually just for the base, I'll have an epoxy resin. You just mix the two bits together, slap it on like so, and in goes the model bit. It does take a longer time to dry, maybe like 10-15 minutes, but the grab of that hold with the glue is so much stronger when you do it this way. I wouldn't use it for like the smaller parts of the model, because I don't know, you'd have to sit there and like clamp it in your hands for like 15 minutes, and you're probably not going to get a really good grab because you might move or something, I don't know. And you may have noticed leaves all over the base. That's from this little packet, Green Stuff World. This stuff rules. They're really realistic looking small leaves, dead leaves. I got some green and lively ones too, but those were from some random Amazon marketplace. Just a tiny blip of glue, and just put it down, hold it for a second, and you're done. I mixed a couple of them up, and probably don't put too many down because you don't want it to be overcrowded. Starting on the toucans, deck tan is what I'm using to put the base coat down, and that is because orange never goes over well on black, and toucans are obviously orange. So always white out the area first before orange, or yellow for that matter if you need to put yellow down. It just does not play nice with black, so always putting down that white-ish colour. And then fire orange, very bright, very powerful orange. You're only seeing me apply one coat here, and it's pretty lazy, but this is after multiple coats off camera. I'm just not recording myself do the same thing 4 times over. Now, a lot of the detail on this thing is not sculpted in, and I had to just Google what a toucan looks like, because I didn't know. There's lots of little shapes, and as you can see from the toucan on the left, the little black bits here and there, none of this is really sculpted on the model. So just look that up and, you know, get your positioning right. I'm using a reddish orange for the shadows here, and also on top of the beak a little bit, and then this really bright yellow to blast the topper half, I guess, and just gives the beak a bit of volume. Looks really nice. Again, using the same red tinted orange. It's a strange little mix of colours, but I got it just for this model. Works really nice. Black, just for the eyes. Black out the eyes. I've got 5 different blacks. It doesn't matter what brand of black you're using. Just pick a black, a matte black preferably when you're planning on painting over it anyway, and go to town. Again, multiple different colours I got for this. I don't know what a toucan's actual eye colour is. I think I followed a reference, but yeah, I couldn't even really film myself doing the eyes. You got to get really, really close. My head like blocks out the camera, and yeah, I'm just like slapping a little blob on for the camera, and then I'm really getting up in there and close and filling it out properly off camera. And eyes is one of those things that you really want to take your time with and get them right, because, you know, window to the soul, all that. And it's exceptionally true for model painting. If you have dodgy looking eyes, you're going to have a dodgy looking model. The rest of it doesn't matter anymore. So really take your time, even though, you know, it is just birds on the base. Just take your time. Always finishing off eyeballs with gloss. I think I used the wrong one here actually, but I went back over later, and yeah, just a gloss. Any gloss, not semi-gloss like I used. Just, yeah, a bright gloss. Can be from Vallejo, can be from Tamiya, doesn't really matter, but yeah. And that would be our birds, which would also be our base in completion. This took me like a week and a bit, I think. So quite a long time, longer than I would usually spend on a base. But this was like the crux of why I chose this model, to be honest. I'm not even a Lara Croft fan at all, to be honest. Finally, moving on to the model itself, we got the charred brown, straight on the boots. Again, only in certain areas, no areas in particular, and practically most of the shoe. But you'll see me shoot like certain parts more thoroughly, and that'll leave us with a nice variance. I then move up to a different brown, and I stipple, keyword stipple, so stabby motion, not dry brush, and I'm just stabbing that on in random spots again, coming out with a nice variant look. And then leather brown, dry brush, mainly on the creases and the folds that are visible, but also where the boot may stretch out a bit, so like the heel, the tip of the shoe, and around where the laces are. Looks pretty good. And I just wanted to show the variance of where we are and where the end goal is. So obviously left shoe finished, right shoe much more to go. All those details like the laces and the little buckles on the laces always suck to do. They take forever, but you got to do them. But it looks great when you do it. Using this panel liner wash, I just put it in the dark parts just to make it a little different. You know, it's marginal gains here, but you know, this is the price we pay for finer detail. Again, with this red leather, you're going to see me use this a lot. I use it on many different parts of the model. Pants, quiver, shoes, it's all over the place. And I'm only showing, again, like one layer here, but I will go over this multiple times. But also, you can leave like a watery type of look, like as it is now, because when this dries, it's going to be kind of not, you know, transparent, but it's going to have like see-through parts here and there, seen through to the layer underneath. And that can have a nice variant look. Depends what you want to go for, but I would just make it solid and then like add weathering over the top after the fact. just an easier way to do it in my opinion. I did the laces in the same colour, and then moving to a wash, I dabbed it on a cotton tip and just kind of poked it around. Mainly in like recess areas. I kept it away from like the crest of the creases, if that makes sense. But I just slapped this everywhere for the most part, and as you can see. And again, always keeping in mind, things look very different when they're dry than when they're wet. So keep that in mind. Onto bronze from Pro Acryl. These are excellent metallic paints, by the way. This is the worst job in the world, and you're going to have to do it a lot. So buckle up, just take your time, and remember, when you're done, you've still got another one to do. Also do the little tips where the laces come up, and remember, there's no particular reason why I use this color over that color when it comes to like the metal bits on shoes. It's just making things look slightly different, so not everything looks the same. It's more intrigue to the eye. It's more interesting. It looks better in my opinion. Just don't go crazy with it. Like, you're not going to put high polished chrome on the laces when everything else is dirty. You know what I mean? Like, just make sense. You wouldn't put, this antique looking gold in like a high futuristic setting or whatever. You'd use like aluminium looking type steels. Just make it make sense. I like using this bronze on shoes. I think I use this bronze on shoes like this all the time. It just looks nice, and I always usually have a little bit of silver in there as well, and that nice little balance of different metals just blends together really nice. Very simply with the socks, they want to look dirty and white, so using this bone white, which is like a yellow tinted off-white, and I'll take that around the whole thing. I got to do it multiple times because, as you can see, after just one coat it looks pretty dull and you can still see black shine through, but got to go back, do it again, and then I can't remember if I show it later, but I added a bunch of washes to make them look really dirty. Onto the skin. Since it's black, we have to hit it with a zenithal highlight. Zenithal highlight meaning you shoot a white down from where the sun would be, acting as sunlight. It hits the model, and all the white that hits the model like that is a highlight for the colours that will go over the top of it later on. Back to the skin, we are now starting with the pre-tones. So this is Warlord Magenta. I do use this from the ground affected method. Check out his channel. He has a certain style to his skin that I will not be following. I will be using this starting method though, however. And because it's all sped up, it's kind of hard to follow, but the Warlord Pink gets hit on every part of skin all the way around, full coverage. And we're moving on to the first actual skin tone here. This is a brown rose. I water these down decently, like 60-40 maybe, and I'm just covering mostly the whole skin area, so the crevasses as well as like the highlights and just every surface. This is bringing me up to like a more reasonable color for me to start working. Also get in the habit of satin varnishing your skin tones every proper layer that you actually put down. I could have done it earlier, but I just chose to do it here. Alright, this is a big one. I get a lot of questions about this sometimes. These are regular watercolored pencils. I get a dark purple or blue, whatever your eyes are thinking right now when you see this, and I will take it to a point a bit more, just grind it away on the desk. And this is how I do the veins. So I actually made a huge mistake. You shouldn't copy this necessarily, but I made the veins way too opaque when I drew them in. If you're wondering how I knew where to draw all the veins and how and why and where I got the idea from, I just randomly threw them in there. I didn't actually have a plan. I didn't even look at a reference. I just kind of did it, and they look decent, I think, anyway. But again, I did them very starkly. I used this brown wash with the airbrush pressure turned right down to add freckles. Looks very nice, as you can see, but all this gets thrown out the window because I made the veins so opaque that all the freckles get lost in the sauce. This was the first actual skin tone that I used, so this was a medium flesh tone. On screen you can tell it looks pretty yellow. We will be fixing this with further skin tones, but yeah, don't worry too much. This basic skin tone is very bright, but this is probably my favourite kind, and I do use this tan earth because it is tinted a little bit more dark, which I feel Lara Croft should be kind of tanned. So typically you put these layers on pretty thin, little by little, but this is where the veins kind of ruined it for me because they were just so stark. They stood out so bad, and that is not the effect you want when you're doing veins. You want them to be just barely noticeable. So my problem, as you can see, look how big and bright that vein is. After those layers, I do satin varnish again as well also. Now I'm starting the 3-tone skin wash routine here. So this is a transparent yellow followed by a red and then a blue. You've got to water these down a lot. Pretty much put it on your skin first to test it. If it, you can just dab away the color and so it's not visible anymore, you've probably got it enough. As you can see in the video here, it's very, very, very thin. So I completely cover, and then using a makeup sponge, because it absorbs really well, I dab it off. I don't wipe. Never, 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 never wipe. You will be at risk of actually wiping off the layer of paint you put down before. So dab, gentle dabs. The purpose of these is to add some life back into the skin after all the layers of paint we sprayed on. This red one is probably my favorite. I think this has the most profound effect on the skin. And also I am filming this on not an iPhone, but a Samsung. So it doesn't look quite as good as what it does in real life, but it does look better and more noticeable in real life. Now this little alcohol spritzer goes on after you apply that red wash, and what it does is kind of separates the paint, so it kind of gives off the effect of blood vessels kind of separating, I suppose. Now I'm not the best at this, and the camera's probably not going to show it very well, but I do it every time anyway. It does make a little difference, but it is pretty cool. Followed by the blue wash. You got to be ultra careful with this one. This will and has ruined a couple of models I've done where I had too much pigment in the wash. I put the blue on and I could not get it off. It just looks like shit afterwards. You don't want to leave too much blue in there. Back to this dark flesh tone yet again. I just blast the pants with it this time rather than doing like a stipple or a dry brush the whole way. If you can get away with it, just airbrush it. It comes out smoother, it's way faster, and it looks quite nice, I think. I think these pants are probably my favourite part of the model. Just with all the different materials and things going on, it makes for a beautiful effect. Also, don't forget to mask off any skin. I didn't show it because it took forever, but I did mask off the skin. That is why it is black. Using this brown wash, I shot it into the recesses, pretty much just up a crack. That was the only real place for it. Just darkens it a little bit, adds a bit of variance. Very nice. And back again with the leather brown. I got a makeup brush here, and this is a very empty dry brush, and I am lightly going against the grain on the pants. If you hold these pants up to your face really close, you can see there's a grain, like little lines along the whole thing. I just pretty gently go over the whole pair of pants with this, and it makes a big difference. Like, again, on camera, a little bit more tricky to visualize, but in real life, huge difference. Also, along the seams, you may notice it's a bit darker. That was with that wash that we shot on earlier. I really blasted it right into the stitching. I take that same leather brown and I dust it all over the quiver, mainly aiming for like the stitches and like the corner pieces of the quiver, because obviously with leather, when it stretches over a corner, it like gets lighter. So that's kind of the logic I have in mind when I'm attacking leather. This nocturnal red is what I use for the straps, the belt, the wraps around the quiver. I use this in multiple places. You'll see it show up plenty of times. This rub and buff antique gold, as the name states, is pretty different to the normal paint. You're actually supposed to rub this directly onto the model. So some people might use their finger with like a glove or whatever. You can just use the paper towel. I'm just using the cotton bud. I wipe off most of it, kind of like a dry brush, and just gently rub it on. Simple, works really nice. It's really, really rich gold. Next up, we're doing the silver trims with the buckles all over the boots and the pants and everything. I didn't look at any references for this. This is just my color scheme I decided to go with. Nothing too crazy, but this is interchangeable. Like, most people might just go with the silver and call it a day. I like to throw different metals in there. I think it adds intrigue. Up to you entirely, but doesn't matter what silver either. Like, a lot of the silver brands are very same and same. Now back to that Rhinox hide yet again. I am redoing all the straps and the bottom of this quiver. I did end up going back over the straps, like in the middle and top half of the quiver, with that nocturnal red later. I don't think I recorded it, but you'll see it in the last shots of how that turned out, and I think that looks a lot nicer as well. Now we move to the blickies. These are some of my favorite things to paint because they're really easy and they look really good. So I usually start with a silver. I very gently, also using a very stiff bristled little dry brush here, very gently just do the edges. I kind of go over the whole thing. Anything that's metal I'll hit with this, and then I'll go back in with a brush using the same metal, but in certain parts I'll fully paint in with that silver rather than just dry brushing, and it leads for a much more contrasty look, I suppose. It just adds realism. I should also note that I also did not look at any references for the gun. I just went ham and this is how it came out. Pretty happy with it, but again, like color scheme, I just add different metals because I feel like it and I can, and I think it looks good, so get over it. And look at that. You can't tell me adding a little bit of bronze metal to that doesn't make it look outstanding. It just stands out a bit and has something to offer. It's beautiful. I love it. This is the third different metal I'm using on these pants. This is rich gold from Pro Acryl. I think most of the metals I used on this were Pro Acryl, which are exquisite metals. They have a metal pack, and I have that, and I've used almost all of them, but mainly bronze, silver, and gold. This liquid mask by Ammo is outstanding. So I actually had 2 jars of this from Vallejo. I used it once. It destroyed the model, like it just ripped the paint up. This stuff, you paint it on nice and thick like so, leave it to dry for like an hour or so, maybe. You come back, you peel off a little bit and it peels off everything, like one big skin. I don't think I recorded me peeling it off because I literally thought I destroyed my model again and was going to have to repaint it, but luckily it worked. And yeah, can't recommend it enough. Cost me $30 to get it shipped to my country, but worth it. Also, I would choose a different blue if you cannot find that one that I just used, because it is in a set. Ultramarine blue, very easy to find, same with the express color. When it comes to clothes, you should aim to use like 3 tones. So you got the base tone, which is the first one we put down, obviously. You apply that to everything, cover the entire model. The second one, the maybe darker one or brighter one, whichever one you do first, you put underneath the shadows, obviously for the darker one. And then the brighter one, which I used Glacier here, which it kind of made a difference. It's really hard to see on camera. You spray that from the top, kind of like a zenithal, so you spray it like on top of the chest, where her shoulders are, her shoulder straps, and stuff like that. Also, this rim around her shirt, I just used the darker blue again, but when you use it in a concentrated brush, it's very much more stark, like it's way more noticeable, stands out a lot more. So maybe I could have used a different color and it would have looked a little bit better, but it looks fine for what it is. Same with these bandages, it's again whiting it out. Then again, it's a bandage, so it's already white, so you know, potato potato. But I white this out with the bone white, or the any white for that matter. It really doesn't matter, just choose a white and dirty it down after the fact. You may have noticed all the straps are suddenly black. That is because I went back over and re-blacked them. You should do this anytime you have like a darker tone you want to do over something that's become bright because you oversprayed. It's just good practice, and it leads to a more uniform result on that darker thing. It is at this point that I remembered Lara Croft is not clean, so we got good old trusty wash we've used 30 times already, dabbed a little bit on the sponge and just went ham. Not too ham, we just kind of, you know, back and forward, dusted it off until we were pretty happy and it looked kind of dirty. I was a fool and didn't record it very well, so it was off camera. I then did the same thing with this bloody bandage to try and represent, you know, like maybe an arrow going through her arm and the blood like pooling outwards from that wound. I think it looked pretty good using the sponge to try and do this effect. Using the charred brown, this is what I did all the hair with, so I brushed it onto the actual head sculpt like you see here, but I used the airbrush to just spray the other bits of hair that were loose. Then we're back into the dark flesh tone for the bow. I spray this completely, getting a complete and deep coverage, and we then dry brush it after the fact later on. In keeping with my usual recipe for the ropes, I'm using the desert yellow again for the little ropes around the quiver. Just going all the way around, again straight over black, which looks like garbage, but it is what it is. If it was over white, you'd only need 1 coat of this. I had to do multiple coats, and I'm only showing this little bit because I ended up doing it multiple times. So that's the end product right there, as you can see. And same thing with the fur. I probably didn't need to do this white that I'm doing now on the fur because it's a pretty dark coloured fur. So a little bit of a waste, but it doesn't matter. Now I'll have to confess my sins right now. I don't think I recorded 90% of the gloves getting painted. So just another one of the charred browns, whatever it was, on the base of the glove. And then as you can see here, I got the red, that nocturnal red on the knuckles, and that scrag brown on the back of the palm, I believe. And then dry brushing the bow just to bring out the wood texture. So whenever you see wood textures and you can actually like feel it, you always want to go against the grain with lighter colored woods. I did this twice, so I used that other one first, and now I'm using the Bane Blade Brown. This Bane Blade really brings out the, you know, the woodness. I'm not sure what else you'd call it, but looks really nice. And we're back onto the dark flesh tone yet again. This is what I mean by I probably did not need to white out those furry bits, because this is a darker toned brown and very rich, so I could have just overpowered what was already there with that and just been done with it. Now I feel I did not really need to do the feathers the way that I did them. I'd never done feathers and I haven't really thought about how I was going to do them. I just kind of went for it. So I started with the magic blue or the marine blue and then worked my way up lighter colours, and the idea was I was going to use a wet brush over the already wet paint and kind of wet blend them together, going from like the deep blue in, you know, the center of the arrow where it's attached to the stick, and then work my way to brighter on the outside. But then I remembered, you know, I don't actually know how to do that very well, so what ended up being was just some randomly coloured feathers. And you know what? After you run a dirty wash over them and you satin varnish them, they still look pretty dang good. Now back to the beloved Nocturnal Red. I just redid the straps holding the arrows together and a little bit like halfway in between, and a bit of a weird one, but I'm going to be using bronze to dry brush over the brown hair to make it look like this. This is from Ground Affected, and I had not previously used this, but it works pretty good. Not sure if I'll use it again, but there you go. Now, this step makes a difference. Alright, oil pastels. This is the brand I have. These make a huge difference on the skin, and yes, I'm going back to the skin again. So, down onto the paper towel, make a little puddle, using a little brush, a little makeup brush if you have one. Otherwise, just a small brush. And very much in the same vein as a dry brush, you do want to dip it into the little pile and then get rid of the excess. And we're attacking elbows, creases, anything like that, any bulges even. And it is showing up on camera here, but it looks phenomenally better in real life. That little subtle redness to the stretching of the skin over bone, that just adds so much, especially on the knee here. Again, you probably can't see too much on camera, but such a pivotal difference I find. I do this to every female model I do now, and some male models as well. You can also do this to cheeks and with different colors as like makeup blush. You can do a lot with this little technique. I can't even remember who I learnt this from, but it's something special. You just got to be careful that when you apply your varnish, you don't like blast it away, because it can kind of get lost in that varnish. I'm doing a little bit of an eyeshadow with the spongy part of this little brush around her eyes. I don't know if I super like it or hate it, but it's something. And now the hardest, most difficult part of any model ever, the eyes. So for the sclera, which is the white of the eye that I'm doing now, I mix a tiny bit of skin tone with off-white. Very big importance there that it is off-white and not pure white. And you just fill the entire eye in like so. And for the first time in my life, I had to actually manually paint on eyebrows that were not sculpted in. Again, I have not had to do this before. This was very tricky for me. The one on the right, or the left, I don't know, the one that I did before the one I'm doing now was like perfect. I was blown away how well I did it. This one is bushy as hell and way different. I had to go back and make the other one bigger to compensate for this one. But tiny little strokes, you're not like slapping paint down, you're doing tiny little stabs like 1,000 times over. And blacking out the eyelashes and the bottom of the eyelid, as well as adding tiny little micro brush strokes to make up bottom eyelashes that are not sculpted in yet again. Tiny little differences go a long way. And I can't even offer up much advice here really, because I messed this part up as well at the end of the day, and that is getting the eyes centered properly. It's hard. I still have yet to do it properly, I think, on any model ever. It's just one of those things where it's so, 1 millimeter off and it looks funny. Pretty much starting off the eye, fully black out where the iris would be, that is the coloured part of the eye. Fully black out that whole section, because then we're going to start layering colour on top. Now the way I do the eyes is I pick whatever colour it is and I start with the darkest version of that colour. I don't think I recorded that actually here, but you fill in that iris almost completely except for a tiny little rim of black around the outside. And once you've done that, you move up to the brighter colour, and instead of filling it out, you're just very gently tapping that little brush and kind of blending the center of the eye to be brighter, working your way out a little bit, but you still want that dark part of the iris to shine through a bit. Again, I am not the professional when it comes to eyes. I'm learning a lot every model I do, but this is one of my better pair I've done, I have to say. And here comes the pupils, and this is where I made my biggest mistake. I don't know if you can see it in this image, but they are looking in slight different directions. Using this Orcish Dermis from the Fairy Flesh set. Again, this is from a set, so you don't have to use this colour exactly, but it just makes for a very nice slight pink shade to put on the lips. You can do the full makeup route and give her a dark coloured lipstick look if you want, but I just tried to stick to a more natural look, so light pink it was. Going back to the eyes, the specular highlight, a very important part of the eye. You can brush this, but I would recommend doing what I'm doing here, and that's using a toothpick, because it's a nice, stiff, small little point. Dip it straight into a white, and it has to be a very pure, bright white, not an off-white, a pure white, and just a little dab. And if you can, try and keep them centered on both. So if you have one in one spot, you want to do the other one in the same spot on that other eye, if you know what I mean. Next, I'm going to bloody her up a little bit. So there's a little actually molded in gouge here. It's supposed to be like a wound on her. So we bloody it up. First I fill it in with a bit of the Crimson Caraborg, whatever. And I put some on the bandage as well, try and make it look like a naturally, oozing wound type of thing. And I dab away a bit of the excess with a cotton bud to make it look like it's dried blood, like it's been there for a little bit. It's like a day-old wound. Technical blood for the blood gods. This is my favorite thing. I use this all the time whenever I get the chance. I love doing blood on models. I just dab it slightly in the wound, and then here, very ridiculously, you can see I'm actually holding this brush with my mouth. You can see my big fat nose on screen in a minute. And I'm just using the brush to shoot air onto the brush to blow the paint onto the model that way. A little ridiculous, but it works out. So, and lastly here for the pendant, we're using a chrome. It has to go over glossy black, keep that in mind. So you black, then you gloss the black, then you can put the chrome over. Also for the lips and eyes, you need to gloss those to make them look wet and alive. The lips, you just put it on as normal. With the eyes, you should rather dab it gently and let it pool up there to really sell that wet eye look effect. I used semi-gloss in that clip, but you should be using gloss. This clear green is, well, we're using clear so the chrome shines through. So, you know, there's a reason for everything, and just remember that when you're doing stuff on your own. I double up those coats of green again and put the portrait on the model, and it's done. Now, I ain't sponsored by anyone, obviously, because I'm such a small baby bitch boy channel, but I have to thank Says Studios for making such good models. Like just the textures, but more importantly, and something that probably doesn't get enough credit, the way things fit. And more importantly, again, the way things are cut. To cut something and to make it slot into place, like on the base, cleanly, and to hide the seams is a joy and not to be underestimated. The way things fit together from the way they were cut is such an integral piece that people just don't seem to care about sometimes, but it is so integral to cutting down our end of the work by not having to grind and gap fill such huge proportions. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed everything, and please enjoy this bit of B-roll. Bye. How's that? Well, I hope you enjoyed that, because I certainly enjoyed making it. Now, this took a lot of paint, and by a lot, I mean more than this. What I have here is some 50 plus bottles, and that's not even everything. That's just what I remembered to put on this dish. Now, keep in mind, you do not need this much paint to do something like this. I just have this much at my disposal because I'm an addict. I can't stop buying paint. I love it. Now, there are numerous little bits and pieces here that I skipped over, either because it was taking too long, it was too impractical, the video was getting too long, or I forgot. There's many reasons, and I apologize. Please leave comments down below if there's specific things that I didn't cover. I will get back to you. But more importantly, one thing I didn't cover that really sold how good this base looks, that doesn't really show up on camera, is this wet effects fluid from AK Interactive. Glossy fluid to make humidity effects. It makes things look moist. Anyways, I really appreciate you if you stuck around and watched the video. I know it's really long. If you have feedback and think it should be way shorter, I should streamline them a bit more, let me know. I'll work on it for the next one. Next one, by the way, is a little sneaky picture on who the next victim is. Key takeaway from the end of this video is, please, if you are interested in anything paint related, you're new, you're moderate, you're good, please join the Discord I have listed below. It is my personal Discord I've created specifically for this painting hobby. I've got a fair few new guys in there. I've got some moderates and I got some really good guys, and they all help each other, they mingle, we share models with each other, not the files. Chill. We don't share the files, but we like suggest models that others can paint. We have like help sections so you can help each other out if you got problems with your printer, something's not working, you're trying to figure out how to paint a certain effect. We got people that'll help you do that. So join the Discord, it's a great community I'm trying to build, and yeah, join me for the next video. Cheers.